Hello.
Hi.
Have you ever lived somewhere for so long that you began to sound like the locals? Well, that's what happened to us to the extreme. My name is Evan Edinger, and I'm an American that's been living in the UK for over 12 years.
I'm Lawrence Brown, and I'm a British person who's been living in America for even longer, 16 years.
So how have we changed, both in our accent, food preference, even our identity? Today we're going to explore all of that. Also, over the many years, I've received so many comments saying, oh, you're like lost in the pond, but the opposite. So here we are.
I've had the same thing. It's just infuriating.
You're the opposite of yourself?
Yes.
So, first section here, we're going to talk about accents. So, my first question to you, when did you realize that your accent was changing? What American word was the one you found yourself accidentally saying the most?
It was a phrase, actually. It was, I know right. As in,
I know, right?
I know, right? But I didn't just say it with a British accent. The American accent came out because I'd never used this term back home.
I know, right?
I know, right? Now I do it Britishly because I've heard myself in my videos, and I think I just corrected my accent after the fact because I wanted to be British in my videos because there's a kind of benefit to doing so with an American audience. It really is as shallow as that.
My word for that would be either mate, which I use all the time now. I feel like I use it at shops, I use it everywhere. Just mate feels like a nice dude type word.
When you say mate, do you ever say it quite quickly and do it with a kind of glottal stop to where you don't actually pronounce the T, but you say mate?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah?
I do that, mate.
Yeah, because it's these things when you speak quickly, you adopt the parlance of the people who you're talking to, I suppose.
When you said you actually said, I know right in an American accent, that really made me think, how often when you first moved here, and or still now, do you find yourself masking your accent? Are you putting on an American accent in specific scenarios like in shops?
Yes, actually, I do. It's less shops and it's more restaurants. When I order a water, it's just so difficult because that particular word contains so many different sounds in it that are different on this side of the pond. And so I get many confused looks with that particular word. So I do end up saying water.
Can I have a water bottle?
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I went to the local flea market in my town last week, and the people there working, they're Amish, and she said, can I have a bottle of water?
A bottle of water.
And they were like, what? What?
Yeah.
My area, we say water.
Similar in Pennsylvania, I think, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I found myself masking almost immediately. It was a thing where I would just put on like my version of a London accent as a way to not be noticed.
Yeah.
Not necessarily stick out like a sore thumb with like, hey, can I get just this, please? And I'd be like, just this, thanks. When I'm on the underground, I don't want people to think I'm an American, so I'll say, excuse me, sorry, can I get off? That way, no worries, people don't go, oh, are you American? You know, I don't want to deal with that.
It's amazing the degree to which that is a superpower. But I think the opposite's true as well when you want to use your actual accent to curry favor with specific groups of people.
Who do you think in Britain I use my American accent for?
The Prime Minister, I don't know.
The correct answer is the police. Oh, I'm so sorry, officer. Oh no, I'm from America. I didn't know you weren't allowed to drive on the sidewalk with your bike. In New Jersey, we do that all the time. And they're like, oh, he's just an idiot.
Do you know George Clooney, mate?
What is that accent?
I don't know. It wasn't my natural accent.
That's what, I don't sound like a real American when I put on my American accent anymore. There's British things seeping through, so it sounds fake. Hey, how's it going? That just sounds like a generic accent.
Well, my background is in acting, and I used to be very good at regional British accents. But I think what I've done now is, when I do a kind of, what I perceive to be a London accent, it's an Americanization of a London accent, not quite Dick Van Dyke.
I was just about to say, are you Dick Van Dyking?
No, I'm not Dick Van Dyking, which also sounds like a euphemism. I just hear other Americans do it, and my brain has become sort of American linguistically in that sense.
Yeah, my first time visiting my hometown, which was 7 or 8 years after I'd left, I felt like I was able to pretend to be from New Jersey again. Sorry, weird, I am from New Jersey, but to pretend that I was a local, going into my Wawa, and I was like, yeah, can I just have this? Yeah, sure. But the one thing that seeped out was, thanks, mate. Oh, and then I was like an immediate, where are you from? I went, I'm from here.
Yeah.
This is my hometown. This trip, which is now 12 years, I can't hide it anymore, but I also don't want to. I feel like now that I have this weird hodgepodge accent, it does make me a little bit stick out, but in an interesting way.
Well, it's true. I mean, I think when I moved here, and this continued for a long time, when I applied for jobs and things like that, I almost think it helped me get a job by having a British accent. So it forced me to want to keep it.
It makes you stand out.
Yeah, it does. Because I think there are people who unconsciously lose their accent when they've lived in a place for a long time, or end up with a hybrid British-American accent like Kelly Osbourne.
Yeah.
I don't know why she was the person I thought of, but still.
I mean, even thinking about it just within the little island of Great Britain, British people of different social classes will try and mask their social class when moving anywhere. Whereas I feel like in the US, it's not as big a thing.
I think you're right, and even if it were, I don't know that my accent is, I don't know that most Americans would determine it to be posh or unposh.
My partner has the most RP Queen's English accent I've ever heard. Sounds like people in The Crown. I take her to my local pizza parlor and they hear her accent, and this guy from New Jersey says, "Oh, you're from England?" And she says, "Yes." And he says, "Oh, sounds like, let me guess, a Midlands accent?" And I was like, what the
Wow.
That is the least Brummy accent I've ever... It was like he just heard that there's a place called the Midlands and went, that's in England.
Or, to bring the Osbournes back into this, he's probably heard Ozzy Osbourne, big fan, and just knows that he's from the Midlands and just assumes everybody is.
I can't imagine any American knowing the Midlands except that one man.
Yeah.
No offense to the Midlands. Not a lot of Brits know it exists.
It's true, I've already forgotten myself.
I, like I said, like to hide my British accent a lot of times, and I was at my brother's wedding recently, and one word slipped out that I thought was so American, and yet they went, that's not right, and it was literally.
How would you say it? I mean, you just really...
I did. So I think Americanly you would say, oh, I literally did that.
Yeah.
With 2 Ds, literally. But I now, without even thinking, just say, oh yeah, I literally went there with a T.
We often talk about that particular word because British people love to rush the word literally.
Literally.
They'll often say literally, like that.
Literally.
And they'll drop all manner of sounds.
The word trash to me feels weird. I'm very much now a bin man. I like the word bin, it's cute.
I have something to say about that because I say trash. And I think when you have kind of things that you do on a daily basis, like take out the trash, it's going to enter your
vernacular.
Way more readily.
But is there a word that you refuse to use that's American because you're like, it's car park.
Yes.
Your parking lot.
The number one word is addicting.
As opposed to addictive?
As opposed to addictive. Now, most Americans actually do say addictive, but there are small pockets of people that say addicting. I am all for the evolution of language. I am very much a fan of that, but there are just some words that get my goat.
I hate on accident as opposed to by accident, but I feel like I have to give up because that's just what people say.
They do, even if they're doing it on accident.
All right, we've talked a lot about words and accents, but now it's everyone's favorite topic, which is food.
Yes.
Is there any food that when you first moved to the US, you disliked, but now you're like, actually?
I think it's actually coffee. I think American coffee culture actually convinced me that I should try it eventually, because when I lived in Britain, I never touched coffee, not even with my hands. But then when I got here, I saw more and more people having it. Somebody had me try, what's that coffee flavored dessert? Is it tiramisu?
Tiramisu, yeah.
I tried that. I was like, that's actually all right, I'll try it. And then I became obsessed with coffee thereafter, so.
I will say, I feel like US coffee is coffee drink.
Yeah,
It's not coffee. I don't really like American coffee these days when I go to any place that has the pouring type coffee. To me, it doesn't taste good without adding lots of milk and sugar and corn syrup. But maybe that's just the places that I've gone.
For me, it's less about the taste,
Yeah.
and it's more about the effect.
Okay,
it's the caffeine. There's probably plenty of other things.
For me, I moved to the UK and I was like, absolutely not beans on toast.
Yeah.
Now I like beans on toast.
Yeah.
It's a struggle meal, as in I'm so exhausted. I've got bread, I've got beans, and a little bit of cheddar, boom. It's just so easy and savory and nice.
I know, right?
What is one British food that you would want to import into the US if you could?
Sausage rolls.
Oh, yeah.
I was in New York City actually once, and we ordered what was known as a sausage roll from a street vendor.
Yes.
I don't even know what that was. It was nothing like it.
Very disappointing.
And this is going to be really sad to say, but specifically Greg's sausage rolls.
Yeah.
If they could
No,
just
it hits a spot. It's easy, it's cheap.
If they could just import that to my house, I think my life would be perfect.
Yeah, that would be me with like having a Wawa hoagie whenever I wanted. One further question, I did make a video recently where I was trying all the British crisps, and so I have to ask, do you like Twiglets?
I love Twiglets. It's the weirdest thing.
Maybe wretch.
Most people don't like them. Most people don't like Marmite. I'm not even convinced I'm a particular fan of Marmite, especially on bread. But you give me a Twiglet any day of the week, I'll eat them all.
I should have brought them because I'm gonna bin them. They're so bad. I was retching. It was so gross.
Yeah, I'm not even offended.
I know that you've made quite a few videos about this topic, but were you ever really fully prepared for just how cold it gets here?
No, and I'm still not, in fact. I've lived in Chicago now for 8 years, and whenever those winters hit, although they didn't this year, whenever they hit, I mostly stay inside. I made the mistake when I first moved here. Don't ever not wear gloves in -3 degrees while scraping ice off your car. It's bad. The first thing that actually showed me how bad it is that my nasal hairs froze in one winter. I was only outside for about 10 minutes.
The number one thing out of everything that I miss about where I'm from is the fact that we have 4 seasons. I miss snow. And in London, maybe you get 1 day of snow a year and it's just kind of mush. And in the summer, it's like, oh man, it's 30 degrees Celsius for like a week. Speaking of that, it's 26 in Chicago today on October 28th, which is insane. 26 means nothing to you now, doesn't it?
26 means 0 to me. It doesn't literally mean 0. I mean, that would be weird. But yeah, I actually was talking about this the other day. I cannot remember what Celsius really means.
I was at this hotel in Ohio and they had the Ohio weather news on.
Yes.
And I was seeing them list the weather and it was like 58, 63, and I went, this means nothing to me.
These are just numbers.
My concept of temperature is just Celsius.
And the other thing is that I have to deal with such extremes of temperatures that the range of numbers is so much greater.
In Britain, we're just got to deal with between like 0 and 20.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes it gets to 30.
So it seems like each of us disprefers the weather of our adoptive country, and I think that's just down to perspective. And I do genuinely crave that kind of mostly mild weather with overcast skies.
Wow. As someone who's now lived in the US for so long, when you look at elections in the UK, are you just kind of looking across like almost the way that I look in the US, like, oh, look at that. Not going to affect me.
To a degree, yes, because I think I feel so removed from the run-up to those elections. I get involved around the week of the election, and
because they don't go on that long. You guys have them for, I feel like, 2 years.
Yeah, I made a joke recently that it feels like the US election has been going on since 1789. I feel like in the age of the internet, you almost can't avoid it. I mean, on social media, I am set up so that I get British feeds and things like that, but also I'm surrounded by American politics all the time. So I get a fair share of it, but I don't have an intimate knowledge of British politics like I perhaps used to.
I also follow a lot of American news stuff. I watch some YouTubers that tell me what's going on in America, and I read a lot of stuff. So like, I guess I'm aware of both, but my watching of US stuff is kind of like, oh boy, I hope that works out, because it doesn't affect me as much.
You do feel a sense of being removed from it. I gain that sense when I see people's vitriol and kind of anger at what's going on in the UK. I sort of feel it on a general level, but not like they perhaps will, because I'm, again, not being affected.
When Trump was elected, it was negative for me, because at that point I sounded way more American, and I'm in the UK, so that's everyone's question is, oh, you're American? What's your thoughts on Trump? I don't want to deal with that.
On the other side of the coin, though, I do not get asked very often about
what are your
Keir
thoughts on the new Labour government?
Yes.
Do you feel like flip-flop Keir Starmer is really here to stay? And you're like, no American knows about that.
Now, as a YouTube sensation with an American audience, people might be interested in it, but generally the Joe on the street does not care about it.
I feel like if I asked 100 people in Chicago who the Prime Minister is in the UK, maybe one.
Who is it these days? Is it Keir?
It is Keir.
He did win, okay.
See, there's your one. That's the one guy. That's fun. Do you feel like you identify more as an American now? And also, when you did get your American citizenship, did you feel how nice it was that it felt like it was super duper congratulatory and every American around you was so like, hooray? Because for me, it was the exact opposite. When I became a British citizen, I expected the fanfare that comes with the US stuff. And instead I got, why'd you do that, mate?
This comes back to something that you said to me off camera, that British people are the biggest critics of Britain itself.
Yeah.
And so they would see that as a kind of weird decision on your part. I think for me, yes, I did get a lot of congratulations from family members, from people online who I've never met in my life. It was nice. And becoming a citizen, I did feel American overnight. I can't explain it. It was just paperwork. But I suddenly felt this deep sense of pride. It genuinely did feel, and still does, and I'm about to vote as well for the first time.
Hell yeah.
It makes me feel more American, and I identify, in terms of name, by I am British American.
Sure.
But I slip into both, I think.
Yeah, you can go both ways. I do the same, because sometimes, I say I'm an American, and then other times, I also say I'm British because I genuinely feel connected to both. Similar to you, except the opposite, I definitely skew more British now.
Yeah.
But I still am American.
Yes.
My upbringing was this.
Yeah. It used to be that I was a far more reserved person. And I don't mean simply shy. I mean, I didn't want to tread on people's toes. That whole British politeness thing. But living here has sort of gotten that out of me.
Yeah.
Other people are very direct to me, so I'm very direct to them.
I feel like because I'm American in Britain, because I am a direct, more American talking person, I get more because people aren't used to that, I guess. People are way more reserved and things. I guess my issue was, as much as I genuinely feel like a Londoner and I identify as from my local area and I identify as a British person, there is a lot of Brits that do not view me this way because they view the moniker of British as has to have the upbringing here. Whereas in the US, from my upbringing, it was always like anyone who moves here and wants to become an American and wants the freedoms, they can become one. So I feel like it's just that different belief in culture.
I think there's definitely an element to that. I think sometimes, though, the accent that I have...
Oh, that does throw off, yeah.
It does throw things off. I mean, because people will still refer to me as a British person, and I'm fine with that. Why would I have a problem with it? I very much present that way. But, it is nice to say, well, if they're talking about Americans as some sort of abstract idea, I will say, well, I am American too.
Yeah.
At that point, I will certainly bring it up to them.
I feel like I do the same thing so many times, where when I mask, I put on this British accent and some word like, maybe I'll accidentally say restroom in a British accent, which has never been said before.
Yeah.
And then someone will say, where are you from? Where's your accent from? And then I try and double down and go, oh, I'm actually from Chiswick. And then they go, really? And I'm like, Chiswick for 4 years, but yeah, I'm from New Jersey. I give up eventually.
Yeah. You could almost say, I'm from Jersey, and they'll think that you mean the island.
And they'll say, oh, where the milk comes from? Be like, no, where the tomatoes come from.
Never have to question it. I could do something similar. I'm from Grimsby. There is a Grimsby in Illinois. It's a little tiny village. And nobody knows about it, so it wouldn't really work on the same level, but still.
It's my favorite holiday. Do you celebrate Thanksgiving?
I do, and in fact, I agree with you, Evan. Coming to the US, my favorite of all of the American holidays is indeed Thanksgiving, because it's such a departure from anything we have in Britain.
It's the least commercialized. Thanksgiving is just be with your family, just eat really nice food together, and be thankful.
I have to ask you though, talking of commercialization, what about the day after Thanksgiving?
Oh, Black Friday.
And I've heard it's taken off in Britain.
I used to love Black Friday. I'd actually go to the King of Prussia Mall just to people watch. I wouldn't buy things, but I just watched Americans fighting for things, and I found it interesting. When I first moved to the UK, I went down Oxford Street, and I also went to Westfield, Stratford, and it was carnage there. But then when I did it like a couple years later, it didn't really hit. I think it's because online sales and such, Black Friday isn't as big a thing.
Yes.
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday is the big deal, yeah.
Do you celebrate any British holidays here? Are you like a Burns night, or what is the other one, Bonfire night?
For the longest time, I tried to celebrate Bonfire Night here. Most people have never heard of it. But sometimes you will find different groups of British people might try and put on a thing, but it just doesn't catch fire, as it were.
There it is. Is there any freedoms that you have now that you're thankful for?
That I don't have in Britain?
Yeah.
I'd have to think about this.
Yeah, there's not really...
I think there are things, but they're not things that have overwhelmingly changed my life, I'd
say the only thing, like literally only thing that I am upset that I've lost as a freedom is actually the right to free speech.
Oh, I liked how you went into that.
For me, what genuinely scared me a bit was when in the UK they passed a few laws and there were people making jokes on Twitter that were arrested. There were people saying things on Twitter that then required them to be sued in court for libel.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I grew up knowing that like you have the right, unalienable, to say what you want.
Yeah.
And now in Britain, the country I've chosen to live in, it's a bit dubious. You can't necessarily just freely speak.
But you can freely walk. I think that that's something that's a bit easier in the UK, despite the fact that we're in Lincoln Park right now. A lot of places don't even have sidewalks.
Yes.
So obviously that's not a legal imposition, but it is something where the city has basically said, well, we don't care about pedestrians.
That's actually, I'd say, the number one reason why I would never move back. Out of everything is pretty much the walkability. Chicago is very walkable. I will say this is very nice. We have transit, we have the bus, there's bike lanes. So this is actually quite nice for American standards, but it would have to be a city like this because otherwise I'd have to get a car and I just don't want to do that. Sometimes I want to walk.
Yeah, and a lot of Britain, I think, is like that, even when you get out into the countryside.
You can walk in Grimsby. You get a free knife in the chest or some shit.
Yeah, usually glassed with a bottle that's how I was taken out.
But before I ask Lawrence my final big question in this video, I know you've probably got a big question for me, which is, Evan, I've been noticing you checking your phone a lot. How are you, dealing with all the high roaming fees? Well, thanks for that. It's a very specific question and very conveniently allows me to talk about today's video sponsor, Airalo. Airalo, if you didn't know, is one of the most trusted eSIM providers out there. It allows you to basically get all of your data abroad without dealing with the high roaming fees of your carrier. For a traveler like me that travels all the time, it's super duper convenient. And I did do my due diligence before, working with Airalo, checked for an online consensus, and Reddit seems to love them, which is great. It makes sense as the app just kind of works, which is what you'd expect, right? It's trusted by over 10 million travelers across over 200 countries and regions. All you have to do is install the Airalo app, then choose an eSIM package based on what destination you're going to. For me, in this instance, it was the USA. And then you just purchase it. And then with a couple taps, bish bash bosh, you've got yourself cheap data. Hooray. And because I'm feeling particularly generous today, and not just because it's a very specific requirement of my ad read, I'm gonna be giving you guys a discount code just this once. Use Evan3 to get $3 off your first eSIM with Airalo. So thanks Airalo for sponsoring. Don't forget to install it today. And let me get back to asking Lawrence that final big question. When you visited your hometown for the first time after living here for so long, did you feel like you belonged anymore?
No, I don't think so. And I think actually I'd had an experience where I didn't feel like I belonged even when I lived in England, because I'd left and gone to London. And I love Grimsby in terms of the memories that I had there and all of this. There's just not a lot of opportunity, I think. So,
that's the same thing I feel about my hometown in South Jersey.
yeah. After I left the first time to go to university, there was never any going back. But when I go to visit, it's more just about to see my family.
Same, yeah.
Sometimes, you know, I'll go to my old haunt, which is a fish and chip restaurant. But beyond that, yeah, not really. I've made a life for myself here. I've changed as a human, I think, and so your inclination toward a place changes as a result of that.
But if you want to know my answer to that question, which is quite deep indeed, we actually did a video on Lawrence's channel. So if you'd like to see that, please click the link that is currently on his nethers.
Uh-oh.
Check out Lawrence's channel in general. If you like my stuff, you definitely like Lawrence's stuff. So
I agree.
well, thank you very much for coming on the channel. We actually have maybe some videos on my second channel as well, trying out some Chicago pizza and other things. So stay tuned for that.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me in what is essentially my park. I always film here, and I'll see you soon.
I will see you over there. Goodbye.
Bye.